Hey, what's up guys? My name's Brandon and welcome to Audio Addiction, where you can get your latest news, reviews, and, weekly episodes. We do weekly episodes every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. We'd love to see you guys there and hanging out in the chat with us. We also post it on Twitter and on Facebook when we're going live most of the time. So if you want to do that, you can follow us. I'll make sure to leave some, links in the description. And also subscribe and like the video. That really helps our channel grow, and we would really appreciate the support. You don't understand. But again, I'm getting away from myself. We're about, Pierce the Veil's Misadventures tonight. Now, I know guys, this album has been out for a week now, but I honestly wanted to do a super solid review for you guys on this album because it's one of my favorites for this year for sure. Now, a little background on Pierce the Veil. They're obviously no stranger to the game. This is their fourth full studio-length album, and it's called Misadventures, like I mentioned before. And we're going to see if it stacks up against the rest of their discography, like A Flair for the Dramatic, Selfish Machines, and Collide with the Sky. So, let's dive in, which, ironically enough, is the first track, Dive In. And, it starts off like classic Pierce the Veil. Like, I you can't understand, like, it definitely sounds like just like a track off of Selfish Machines for sure. Awesome opener track. It really does help, us, the listeners, get engaged, and, it helps show, like, what we can expect for this record. Awesome track. It almost feels like a B-side track off of Selfish Machines or like Collide with the Sky. It's probably that good. And I mean, I'm sure, they've had tracks for a long time, and, like, they sit on tracks, and some tracks just don't make it onto an album, so it's awesome that they included it. They have this awesome break in the track. I don't know how far along it is. I think it's like a minute 40, but awesome breakdown part. Probably the second heaviest track off this record, for sure, but definitely solid opener. Love this track so much. So we'll move on to the second track, which is Texas is Forever. So this was their second single that they released off of Misadventures, obviously before they released the album. And it's a great second track. Like, there's definitely no disappointing feelings in my mind about any of these tracks. They're awesome tracks, well thought out. Props to Vic for, putting a lot into this album, Definitely a super solid album. It has that fast-paced, feel to it. It's probably the fastest song off of this record. And it almost reminds me of A Boy Who Could Fly off of Selfish Machines. And it's just solid. It has that, like, pop-punk kind of, like, fast-paced vibe to it. And, Tony, Mike, and Jaime just hold it down on the instrumentals in this track. Super solid track. And, if anybody listened to this single, you knew you were hyped for the record immediately following that. So, awesome second single and also second track. So we'll move on to the third track, which was The Divine Zero. They released this single first, obviously before Misadventures happened. I guess they just released a track because they wanted to and kind of like break the silence, because they hadn't released a track or any sort of indication that they were going to be releasing a new album until this track. And I think it was like 3 years after Collide with the Sky that, they put out this new album. So it's been quite a while since we heard from Pierce the Veil. Obviously, they did a lot of touring, but definitely good to hear that, they didn't lose their vibes at all. And I will admit that this track I didn't like immediately listening to it. Like, when we were listening to it as a single, it just didn't hit me like I thought it would. Like, I'm a big Pierce the Veil fan, and I've been following them since before today. So if you haven't checked out that band, that's an old band with, I believe it's Mike and Vic Fuentes. And they had two other people before they met, Jaime and Tony, and created Pierce the Veil. But that's a story for another time. But, this track definitely grew on me. Definitely grew on me. After listening to it a few times in my car on my way to work, or just at home listening to the album, it definitely grew on me, and it's probably been one of my favorite tracks off the record. and it's still kind of fast paced. Definitely taking thought process from Texas is Forever, and I loved the breakdown part around the 220 mark. Such an awesome part of the track, and I will admit, after listening to it a few times, it's a really solid single. I just don't know why I didn't like it immediately. So we'll move on to track 4, which is called Floral and Fading. Now, this is my personal least favorite track off this record. Like, and there's nothing against people who like this track, because I know there's a lot of people who like it. But to me, it just didn't hit me like the other 3 tracks that I mentioned before. I just don't know what about it. I think maybe it was just because it was just too soft for me, and it almost is reminiscent of that Low on Gas track from Collide with the Sky. I don't know the full title, so somebody will probably comment that. But nonetheless, it was a great track, even though I didn't necessarily enjoy it. Still, they always put out solid stuff. So, great track. So we're moving on to the track number 5, and it's called Phantom Power and Ludicrous Speed. Now, I have to tell you, this is probably one of my favorite tracks off the record for sure. Like, without a doubt, just Vic's voice and and the instruments complementing his voice. I know a lot of people don't like his voice. It's mixed reviews for some people, but I definitely have grown fond of Vic's voice, and this track is one of my favorite. It definitely has that PTV feel to it. And I also like the added bongos towards the middle of the track. It just feels like a classic Pierce the Veil song to me, just like the first track. And you know what? At some parts, it reminds me of my other favorite band, I the Mighty. So if you haven't checked out that band, definitely check them out, because they're actually going to be on tour with Pierce the Veil coming up. So definitely one of my favorite bands, and just to hear some parts that remind me of I the Mighty just makes me adore Pierce the Veil that much more for this track. So we'll move on to track number 6. This was their 3rd single, I believe, that they released off of Misadventures. And it has a Jimmy Eats World feel. Like, I was talking with one of my friends, and she was like, yeah, this definitely sounds like a Jimmy Eats World song. Or it could have been a Jimmy Eats World song, but, I mean, definitely has that Jimmy Eats World feel to it. Like, I really can't describe it. I mean, it has a similar chord progression to what they would use, and it's definitely one of my favorites. I feel like that chorus is super infectious and super groovy and just makes you feel good, and definitely a good choice on their part for choosing this as their 3rd single, because it's a brilliant track. Brilliant track. Props to you, Vic. Beautiful track. So we'll move on to track number 7, and this is called Today I Saw the Whole World. Now, this is another awesome track from Pierce the Veil. I feel like there aren't too many tracks that I didn't like off this record, and I might be a tad bit biased because I have been listening to them for quite a while now, but it's just another super solid track. It's got an awesome bounce to it, and that's what just makes me love it. I also like that break part starting around the 1 minute and 45-second mark. And I'd have to say this is probably their best track off this record, for sure, without a doubt. Obviously, in my opinion, of course, but just it shows a lot of diversity, and it's one of my favorites. So we'll move on to track number 8, and that one's called Gold Medal Ribbon. So I feel like this track didn't get enough love. Obviously there are other awesome tracks off this record, but this one is definitely a gem. Like, I don't feel like a lot of people give this track the credit it deserves. It's an awesome track. Beautifully written, beautifully arranged. I love the solo-ish part towards the beginning with soft pianos and kind of ambient tones. I've always loved that aspect of Pierce the Veil, that they can incorporate kind of ambient effects into their tracks, and just makes the track super clean. And again, another solid track, and it kind of I'm glad that they just diversified in this track. Definitely has that Pierce the Veil feel, but it's also good that they're showing their musical skills. I feel like if you're not an artist and you're not advancing your craft, then why do it? Nobody. There's a lot of people that want the same record, but you don't have to make the same record. I'm glad that they didn't make the same record, but I'm glad that they didn't lose their roots in this album for sure. But I'll talk a little bit about that later. So we'll move on to track number 9, and this one's called Bedless. I really appreciate, again, the ambient tones that they get. Tony's a master at guitar along with Vic, and I know they spent a ton of time making these tracks and putting them together and using like the right type of effects for the right type of tracks, and you can definitely tell that they put a lot of time into it. I love the chord progression towards the chorus part, and it kind of reminds me of Fast Times at Claremont High from Selfish Machines, like part 2. I don't know why, but it just has that kind of feeling to it when you listen to it. So, I mean, if you disagree with me, you can just comment in the description and give your reason why you don't think so. But I personally feel like it's just, it has that type of vibe to it. But again, another solid track from them. And we'll move on to track number 10, which is called Saboca. Now, this track starts off kind of slow at the beginning, but then it really picks up like after the intro. And it definitely is one of the more interesting tracks. Again, I love that they experimented on some of these tracks and really went outside their comfort zone, but still maintaining, the sound we know and love in this album. And the breakdown towards like the 140 mark is seriously one of the best breakdown parts that they've put on any album, in my opinion. It definitely has its own place in my heart, definitely for sure. And probably one of the growers on this album for me. Like, there's a lot of people that enjoyed this track, but I think I had to give myself a few listens before I really, really enjoyed the track. And that's obviously why it took a little bit longer, because I wanted to kind of digest these tracks and really give you good reviews. So, we're going to end it off with the last track, which is a song for Isabella. And like I said, I believe it's an awesome track to end on. Like, it surmises all of the sounds that they've created on this record into kind of like one track, and it's beautiful, spacey. Vic's voice really shines, as well as the rest of the guys in the band. They really did a super solid effort on this album, and it kind of reminds me of Hold On Till May Part 2 from Collide with the Sky. It definitely has that vibe to it. Again, Pierce the Veil, beautifully written track. I love you guys. And hopefully I'll get to see you guys in Philly. So if you're going to the Philly date, hit me up. Hopefully we can meet up, whatever. If not, that's cool too. So I'll kind of give my pros and cons of this album, what I feel like, they really hit on the nail on the head, and where parts I feel like they could have fixed. So, I being a Pierce the Veil fan certainly was not happy that they kept pushing back the album, but being a musician, I understand like you want to have you want to put your best foot forward, and if you didn't really like it, you wouldn't put out your half best work. Like, you always want to put out your best work. So I really appreciate, Vic and the rest of the guys, putting a lot of time into this record, because it shows, definitely. Every track that I went through, it's been a solid track, and it was well worth your wait, because I feel like Misadventures is a masterpiece. I think it might even be better than Selfish Machines, and I know that's hard for me to say, and I don't know if the camera can kind of pick that up, but it's really tough. Like, that was one of my favorite albums growing up, and just to see Misadventures, it's kind of like Selfish Machines, like, turned up a notch, It definitely shows that they're growing as musicians, and I can't wait to see what they put out next. And I mean, I'm glad that they took the time to really nail out these tracks and really put their best foot forward, because it definitely shows, like I mentioned. And that's pretty much it. And my only complaint being that there wasn't a lot of features, and I understand maybe they just wanted to like show their talent and their skill just all alone by themselves, but I also feel like guest features help shine on your tracks. And obviously, like, if you're in the same bracket, like for example Sleeping with Sirens and Pierce the Veil did King for a Day on Collide with the Sky, and they're very similar in the same bracket of music, so it was very a smart choice for them to, you know, obviously pick Kellen Quinn as, you know, one of their guests, and obviously they had a plenty of other guests. But I feel like, you know, maybe Jenna McDougal from Tonight Alive could have featured on a track, or I don't know who else. Maybe like Derek Toscano from State Champs could have done a track with them. I don't know. Maybe their timelines didn't match up or something like that. But I feel like some of the tracks were just lacking. You know, like maybe a guest vocals. I'm not necessarily saying that they were bad tracks. I'm just feeling like they could have done, you know, they could have added guest vocals in if it worked out for them, for sure. Just to add kind of like that extra oomph to the album. Not saying that it needed it, but in my personal opinion, I would have liked to hear maybe at least one guest or two guests on the album. But again, that was my breakdown of pretty much Pierce Seville's Misadventures. I highly recommend picking it up. I'll make sure to leave a link to buy it to Merch Now or iTunes or whatever. And really support these guys. If you aren't able to pick up the album for whatever reason, go see them at their upcoming headliner where they're playing Misadventures in its full capacity, along with Eye of the Mighty and Movements. Both awesome bands, and I hope I can get tickets to the Philly date. I pray. But that's it, guys. Again, please make sure to subscribe and like our videos. You don't know how much it means to us, the Audio Addiction family. We really appreciate it. And until next time. Also, make sure to leave an album in the comments that you'd like me to do in the future. I know I'm going to try to get the Seosin up one in like the next few days. And then as well as I'm going to try to do the Architects one for next week. So those are the two that I have on my radar at this point. But if you want me to do a review on an album, just let me know. Hit me up either in the comments section, or you can, you know, message us on Facebook or whatever you feel is necessary. So you guys have a good night, and I'll be talking with you soon. Peace.